Night fell like a predator, wrapped in a blizzard so fierce it swallowed the entire highway. Temperatures plunged, turning the asphalt into a deadly, slick expanse where every curve was a dangerous gamble. Visibility dropped to mere meters, a blinding whiteout mirroring the scene's utter desolation, making even a short drive an impossible expedition. Amid this frozen chaos, a lone figure, a burly biker, lay sprawled beside his machine, barely visible through the whirling snow. He was trapped, freezing, a shadow fighting the winter's relentless fury, his situation desperate. His breaths were ragged, each one a frantic struggle against the oncoming numbness, a battle for survival. David, a single father navigating the treacherous roads in his old pickup, was just trying to get home to his son, Liam, who was anxiously waiting for his return. He had no idea the desperate act of kindness he was about to extend would change his quiet life forever, leading to an extraordinary display of loyalty he could never have predicted. He had no idea that his small act of kindness would bring 120 motorcycles to his door the next morning, a sight that would shock his entire community. But when he spotted the faint outline of the biker, half buried in a drift, a primal human instinct took over, overpowering his fear and exhaustion. Hesitation was a luxury David couldn't afford on a night like this. Every fiber of his being screamed caution, warning him not to stop for a stranger, especially one who looked so formidable. But the raw sight of a man on the brink of collapse, facing certain death in the brutal cold, extinguished all fear and doubt. He slowed his old pickup, the tires softly crunching over fresh snow, a beacon in the wild whiteness. Rolling down the window, a blast of icy wind hit his face, sharp as shards of glass. The biker, a giant of a man with an ice-crusted beard, stirred slightly, his eyes slits of pain and desperation. "Are you okay?" David shouted, his voice barely audible over the howling wind, thick with genuine concern. The biker could only shake his head, a gesture of profound defeat. His motorcycle, a shining beast under normal circumstances, was now a snow-covered monument to a journey gone terribly wrong. David knew with absolute certainty he couldn't leave him. "Get in," he insisted firmly, motioning to the passenger seat, throwing a lifeline. The biker hesitated, his stare hard and guarded, but his trembling body betrayed his failing resolve. The merciless cold was winning. With a groan of pain, he pushed himself up, an immense effort for frozen limbs, and staggered toward the pickup's saving warmth, the last ember of his hardened pride fading with each desperate, shivering step. The harrowing journey to David's modest house was silent, broken only by the truck's rhythmic hum and the occasional involuntary shudder of his imposing passenger. Once inside, the contrast was shocking and profound. From the blizzard's cutting, numbing cold to the soft, golden warmth of David's humble kitchen, the biker seemed to shed layers of ice and tension, his rigid posture slowly loosening. David, ever practical and instinctively hospitable, immediately set a kettle on the stove and began warming a pot of hearty vegetable soup, the simple act a testament to his innate kindness. Liam, David's 7-year-old son, woke to the commotion, his small face peeking cautiously from the hallway, curiosity wrestling with apprehension. He took in the biker's imposing figure, eyes wide with a blend of innocent fear and unrestrained fascination. The biker, still wrapped in his heavy leather jacket and vest, a silent fortress in the domestic landscape, avoided eye contact, his presence a striking anomaly. David offered him a clean towel and dry clothes, but the biker, who introduced himself simply as Wolf, gruffly refused, muttering something about not wanting to be a bother or cause trouble. The rich, comforting aroma of the soup began to fill the small home, a hopeful scent cutting through the lingering cold and unspoken tension. The steaming soup worked its quiet magic, warming Wolf from the inside out, its simple kindness undoing his outer shell of ice. Each spoonful seemed to slowly reveal the man beneath the biker's hardened facade. He ate slowly, deliberately, his eyes no longer wary, but thoughtfully taking in the lived-in simplicity of the space. His gaze lingered on the fridge door, adorned with Liam's vibrant chalk drawings and a collage of photos of David and his son. Little bursts of shared laughter and quiet joy, a flicker of something like longing, or perhaps a deep appreciation for such genuine domestic warmth, crossed Wolf's rough features, a rare vulnerability. Sensing the subtle shift, David offered a gentle explanation. "That's Liam," he said softly, pointing to a gap-toothed grin in a photo, a quiet invitation to connect. Wolf grunted, a sound not dismissive, but one of deep, understanding acknowledgement. He didn't talk much, but his silence now felt less like an impenetrable wall and more like a calm contemplation, a growing respect. Encouraged by the newfound ease, Liam went back to drawing, occasionally glancing at the imposing guest. In the kitchen's quiet hum, an unlikely bond began to form, not through torrents of words, but through shared humanity and the simple, profound act of breaking bread. As the night wore on, and a hush settled over the small house, David showed Wolf to the tiny guest room. It was nothing fancy, just a modest bed, a dresser, and a window looking out onto the now quiet storm. Wolf stood at the window for a long moment, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the pale glow, a figure lost in thought. His heavy leather vest, adorned with intimidating patches that spoke of a life far removed from this peaceful suburban street, was neatly folded on the lone chair, a silent testament to his world. David paused in the doorway, an extra blanket in his arms, his presence a steadying quiet. "The storm should ease by morning," he offered, his voice gentle, almost a whisper against the heater's soft drone. Wolf turned, his gaze meeting David's. Unspoken gratitude shone in his eyes, deep, sincere, at odds with his rough exterior. "Thank you," he murmured, the words weighted and honest, a rare concession. David simply nodded, a shared understanding passing between them, a silent bond forming. He set down the blanket and quietly closed the door, leaving Wolf to his thoughts. The biker lay awake for a long time, the room's unusual warmth a stark contrast to his typically hard life, and David's unexpected kindness a jarring difference from the world he usually inhabited. He thought of little Liam, and the man who had opened his home without question, knowing he owed them more than words could say. Morning broke crisp and clear, blanketing the world in a pristine, untouched white. The furious blizzard had finally passed, leaving behind a tranquil, almost magical landscape glittering under the rising sun. But the fragile calm didn't last for David. When Wolf stepped out of the house, fully suited in heavy leathers once more, an imposing figure again, the quiet suburban neighborhood stirred with muffled alarm. Curtains twitched, and whispers, sharp and judgmental, hung in the cold, still air. Wolf, now less vulnerable and more the formidable figure his appearance suggested, walked with purpose to his motorcycle, rescued from the highway with David's help, its repairs a silent labor. The gleam of chrome against the immaculate snow and the imposing silhouette of its rider sent a palpable wave of discomfort down the street. David stood on his porch, relief at the storm's end mixing with a growing knot of social unease. He knew the neighborhood gossip mill was already turning, fueled by fear and prejudice. Seemingly oblivious to the silent judgment, Wolf ran a quick, practical inspection of his bike, making sure everything was in order for departure. The engines of the biker's world were about to roar, but not in the way anyone on that quiet street expected, and a new kind of storm was gathering. Just as Wolf prepared to start his engine, a shrill, indignant voice pierced the calm morning. Mrs. Henderson, the self-appointed guardian of the neighborhood's property values, marched aggressively onto David's immaculate lawn, her face a mask of furious outrage. "David!" she screeched, her voice echoing unnaturally as she jabbed a bony, accusing finger first at Wolf, then directly at David. "What is the meaning of this? Bringing a troublemaker into our respectable community? Think of the children." Startled by the sudden venomous outburst, Liam clutched David's leg, his innocent eyes flicking anxiously between his father and the irate neighbor. Wolf, standing by his bike, remained stoic, his eyes unreadable, but a muscle visibly twitched in his jaw. A hot flush of shame and contained anger washed over David. He tried desperately to keep his voice even. Mrs. Henderson, he was stranded in the storm. He needed help. But she wasn't listening, blinded by prejudice. Help? Those types don't need help. They cause trouble. This is a disgrace to the whole street, to our values. Her words, barbed and poisonous, sliced through the cold air, painting David's simple act of kindness as reckless endangerment. The public humiliation cut deeply, not only for him, but for the quiet man who had shared his soup and found temporary refuge. Inside, Liam was inconsolable, his small body shaking with fear and confusion. Why was she so mean, Dad? Is the big man bad? He sobbed, burying his face in David's chest. David held his son tightly, his own emotions a turbulent mix of anger at Mrs. Henderson's cruelty and a growing ache. He knew deep down he had done the right thing, that his moral compass was true, but her venomous words had planted a treacherous seed of doubt in his tired mind. "Sometimes, son," David began, struggling to explain such adult prejudice, "people judge what they don't understand, but that doesn't make kindness wrong. We help people because it's the right thing to do, not because of who they are or what others might think." Wolf, lingering silently in the doorway, somber witness, heard David's gentle, profound explanation. A flicker, perhaps shame, perhaps deep respect, crossed his stoic face. He saw the real struggle David faced, the unexpected social cost of his compassion. It wasn't just David's reputation, it was Wolf's intimidating presence that had brought scorn upon a good man. Accustomed to being feared, the biker suddenly felt the unusual, heavy weight of being a burden. Despite his weariness, David stood firm by his moral compass, a quiet strength that resonated deeply with the unexpected guest. This was more than a passing act. It was a testament to his unshakable character and deep integrity. Wolf stepped out onto the snow-covered driveway, a man profoundly changed by a night of quiet hospitality and deep reflection. He walked with purpose to David and extended a huge, calloused hand. Their handshake was firm, a silent pact of deep understanding and mutual respect, a bond forged in an unexpected storm. "Thank you, David," Wolf murmured, his voice low, sincere, and full of genuine feeling. "You didn't have to. Most people wouldn't." David met his gaze, a small, knowing smile on his lips. "Everyone deserves a warm place in a storm, Wolf. No matter who they are." Wolf nodded, his eyes lingering on Liam, who stood holding his father's hand on the porch. A silent farewell. A small, almost imperceptible nod passed between the intimidating biker and the innocent boy. An unexpected moment of connection. Then, with one last meaningful look at David, a look that promised something unspoken, Wolf swung his leg over the powerful motorcycle. The engine roared to life, a deep, powerful sound that briefly silenced the neighborhood's lingering murmurs. He revved once, a brief defiant salute, and then, with a controlled burst of speed, he rolled down the street. The rumble faded into the distance, leaving behind a tense, unsettled quiet, and a significant promise carried on the wind. David watched him go, relieved, but with a lingering worry. Days blurred into a week, each one feeling heavier than the last. The snow melted, but the neighbors' cold reception lingered, a chill that seeped into David's once friendly street. Mrs. Henderson's venom had truly lit a gossip fire, spreading quickly. David felt the undeniable shift. Polite waves became stiff nods, casual chats turned into hurried goodbyes, averted eyes became the norm. He caught fragments whispered loud enough to hear, "Dangerous, irresponsible." What kind of example for Liam? He tried to ignore it, reminding himself his conscience was clean. That kindness is its own reward. But the relentless isolation, the subtle ostracism, slowly eroded his once unshakable resolve. Sensitive to his father's moods, Liam often asked with innocent concern, "Dad, is the big man coming back?" David would answer, voice heavy with uncertainty, "I don't know, buddy." He found himself looking out at the street more often, harboring a quiet hope that the imposing biker might return, not out of practical need, but perhaps to quiet the unjust whispers that now filled his days. The act of kindness meant to warm a stranger had paradoxically cast a chill over his own life, leaving him to wonder if the emotional cost was simply too high. He felt the immense weight of his decision, a silent burden pressing down on his spirit. The cold shoulder escalated into something far more insidious and overtly hostile. David found a passive-aggressive note tucked neatly into his mailbox, supposedly from the Homeowners Association, but clearly Mrs. Henderson's handiwork. It bristled with veiled complaints about maintaining community standards and the unfortunate presence of undesirable elements in their immaculate neighborhood. The implication was crystal clear. His simple act of kindness was now branded a stain on the street's reputation, a source of shame. David crushed the letter in his fist, a wave of raw frustration and righteous anger coursing through him, making his hands shake. He felt cornered, unjustly judged, utterly alone. He had simply followed his heart, reached out to someone in desperate need, and now he was being shunned by the very people he called neighbors. His small, quiet life, usually a refuge, was now under siege. He worried intensely about the impact on Liam, how children absorb unspoken tensions. Doubt, once a faint whisper, grew louder. Had he been foolish? Had he endangered his son by trusting a stranger? The pressure mounted relentlessly, leaving David feeling less like a hero and more like an outcast, the heavy weight of judgment bearing down on his good intentions, threatening to crush his spirit. He longed for the days when his biggest concern was simply getting by, not being condemned for his humanity. Another ordinary morning began in David's little house. The comforting smell of toast filled the air, and Liam was cheerfully retelling a vivid dream about dragons. David listened with half an ear, his mind still replaying Mrs. Henderson's barbs and the cold notes, a lingering melancholy clinging to him. He tried to push the negativity aside, to focus on his son's chatter, but the unease hung like a heavy cloak. Suddenly, a faint, almost imperceptible rumble began to vibrate through the floorboards, a low hum out of place. It was a distant, deep sound, unlike anything David had heard before. He froze, fork suspended, confusion quickly turning to apprehension. Liam stopped speaking, tilted his head, listening intently, intrigue bright on his face. The rumble swelled, steadily intensifying, becoming a powerful rhythmic thrum that resonated deep in their chests. It wasn't a single vehicle, it was undeniably many, a force approaching. David's apprehension grew, his mind grasping for any rational explanation. City works, a major construction project, but the sound was too organic, too alive, too deliberate. Drawn by an irresistible primal curiosity, he rose from the table and moved slowly to the window, his heart starting to pound a slow, heavy drum against his ribs, a roll of anticipation. The turn, the moment of truth, was upon them. What David saw through his living room window stole his breath, wiping away all doubt and fear. His quiet suburban street, usually lined with sedans and minivans, had been transformed into an unbelievable, breathtaking display of raw power and gleaming chrome. 120 motorcycles, a formidable glinting armada, lined the entire block, stretching as far as the eye could see. Their engines purred in a soft, powerful chorus, a guttural symphony of purpose and collective strength. At the head of this awe-inspiring procession, Wolf swung off the lead bike, his leather-clad figure radiating a silent, commanding authority. He wasn't alone. Dozens of bikers, men and women of imposing stature, began to dismount, their patches and colors proclaiming a brotherhood David could never have imagined. The neighborhood, so quick to judge and condemn, fell utterly silent in profound astonishment. Faces peered from behind curtains, eyes wide with disbelief, fear, and a dawning, stunning realization. The air crackled with an energy at once intimidating and deeply respectful in its intent. This wasn't a threat. It was an arrival, a powerful, undeniable statement. The moment David had unwittingly set in motion weeks ago was finally unfolding, a spectacle that would forever redefine his street and his understanding of true, unshakable loyalty. Wolf walked straight to David's porch, his gaze steady and respectful. "David," he said, his voice carrying a surprising warmth, "my club and I are here to repay a debt." He handed David a thick, heavy envelope. "This is for your trouble, and for anything else you might need." Inside, David found a substantial sum, more than enough to cover his overdue bills and a year of expenses, a genuine lifeline. But the repayment didn't stop there. With the slightest nod from Wolf, the entire assembly of bikers sprang into coordinated action. They weren't there to intimidate, they were there to work, with astonishing precision. Within minutes, David's dilapidated fence was being expertly repaired, the overgrown hedges meticulously trimmed, and a loose shingle fixed by a biker who scaled a ladder with startling agility. Beaming, Liam watched in awe as a group of burly bikers knelt to help him build a snowman. Mrs. Henderson, a pale ghost behind her lace curtains, looked utterly mortified, her judgmental glares replaced by wide-eyed shock and growing shame. Speechless, tears welled in David's eyes. A simple act of human kindness had returned to him tenfold, not just in money, but in dignity, in a vindicated sense of community, and in a profound lesson about judging by appearances, reshaping his entire world. As swiftly and dramatically as they had arrived, the formidable Hell's Angels departed. With a final nod and a genuine smile, Wolf mounted his powerful bike, his eyes meeting David's in a shared understanding that needed no words. The thunderous roar of 120 engines faded into the distance, leaving behind a clean, repaired home, a stunned neighborhood, and a single father deeply changed. With Liam at his side, David looked at his transformed house, now a symbol of resilience, and then at his son's radiant face, alight with newfound joy and wonder. He understood now that true kindness, given without expectation, always finds its way back, often in the most unexpected, overwhelming, and public ways. It wasn't just about the money or the repairs. It was about restored faith in humanity, the breaking of prejudice, and the powerful reminder that the best of us can emerge triumphantly from the darkest storms and the most cynical judgments. This story, of a single father and a Hell's Angel, reminds us that empathy can bridge any divide, that a simple act can set off a chain of profound gratitude and transformation. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of unexpected heroes.